All right, guys, welcome to today's video. Welcome to another edition of Crypto Corner with myself, OJ Jordan, and today I'm joined by Rob Viglione, who is from ZENcash team, and we're going to talk about ZENcash, the developments, and what's happened since our last chat, which was in May with Rob. And in that conversation, we were talking about a possible rebranding, which is now a reality. It happened just a day ago, I believe. So thanks for joining me, Rob. I'm going to let you explain about the rebranding, the reasons for it, and how did it happen?
Yes, well, thank you for having me, OJ. You know, this is perfect timing because we just went live with the new brand yesterday. So the new brand, we went from ZENcash to Horizen. And just to clarify for everyone who might be a little concerned, we're spelling Horizen with a Z-E-N. Which means we're keeping our coin, our cryptocurrencies. It's still just going to be called Zen, and the ticker symbol is still ZEN. So you'll see us on CoinMarketCap and all of your favorite sites still as ZEN on all of the exchanges. The reason this happened was for the last, since we launched in May of 2017, we launched as a cryptocurrency, and we were focusing really hard on being a cryptocurrency that was very usable for people. We were building a lot of wallets. We wanted to just get our currency in as many hands as possible and make it as useful as possible. So we cared about like payment services integrations, POS devices, and so forth. What we've been doing on the engineering side is sort of expanding from there and reshaping our project into being more of a platform. So we're working really hard on a whole bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with currency. So it started to get to a point where it doesn't make sense to call ourselves like a cash if the project is so much more than a cash or a currency, right? So we realized actually we knew all along we were going to have to rebrand. Like we knew that we had this big vision that went well beyond currency. We just didn't want to compete in the currency space. It just didn't make much sense long term. So we actually hit a sort of funny event after a conference in London where we plastered like the London tube stations with ZENcash logos and marketing material. Some bankers in London recognized that our logo was very similar to RBS's logo, and they sent us a cease and desist letter.
This is, you know what, I expected something like that. Funny you saying that, because in our previous chat with Rolf, I had one of the viewers was commenting, "Are you going to change the NatWest logo? Because your logo was really similar to a really big bank, NatWest, in London, and it was just different colors, but it was very, very similar." Yeah. So it was kind of a cheeky comment, but it makes perfect sense, and I kind of expected that you will be having a change of logo. I think even Rolf then announced, he said, if you guys have any ideas, send them over. So it was kind of obvious that you're going into that direction. And also for those of our audience who are not familiar with ZENcash, that was a fork from Zclassic, which is a privacy coin that forked from Zcash, and I believe part of the rebranding right now is that to avoid all of the comparisons, isn't it?
Right, exactly. Yeah,
part of it probably.
There's a variety of reasons. Like the logo is sort of like the funny story. They're like, okay, a bank is telling us to change. Well, we should probably think about changing, and we knew we had to rebrand anyway. So from the branding perspective, one, we're not just a cryptocurrency. Like we're doing so much more. And then of course I'm so tired of like having to correct people. No, we're not Zcash. Like there's so many times where it's like, we just get confused. The name is so similar, right?
Yeah.
And of course it's even worse because our technology at the privacy, like the cryptography levels, derived from Zcash. So we can say, yeah, there's a very clear link to Zcash. They do an amazing job at cryptography development and making it useful to people. We took that tech as part of what we're doing, and then we're going in a completely different direction. So we had to break this link at some point of this comparison to Zcash. So we're our own project. We're moving in so many innovative, unique directions. So the brand has to convey that. But more importantly, from the marketing branding perspective, is the name, the brand. It should be a package deal that means something, right? Like you don't just come up with a name out of thin air because it sounds cool. Like what we did is we put together a task force, which comprised a branding agency that are professionals at doing exactly this. They embedded it with our marketing team, with our community, various other elements from different divisions. And we had this task force that for months, all they did was they took data from the community. They did cross-sectional studies, like they did polls, surveys, they did analysis, competitor analyses, like competitive positioning analysis, like all of this stuff you would expect from professionals, and they synthesized it into something that has meaning for where we're going in the future. That's what Horizen's all about. So Horizen indicates, it's derived from our community sentiment, where the community looks at us as an innovative project. That's why a lot of people are here and part of our community, is they want to be part of this innovation. It's technological innovation, it's social innovation, right? It's economic innovation. So Horizen conveys that, like we're on the frontier, we're looking forward, right? If you look at our new logo, the logo itself conveys openness, inclusivity, which is another big value that our community wants, right? Our tagline now is called bringing privacy to life. So it talks about privacy technology as a really core part of what we are and what we're trying to do, but we're bringing it to life, which really means we're bringing it to market in a way where we want privacy technology to be sexy and to be ubiquitous everywhere. Right? So this is what we mean by bringing it to life. We're not just a technology project, we're also an economics project, a social project, right? So you wrap all of these things together, and it comes together beautifully in Horizen with our new logo, the new name, the new tagline. Our branding, like our messaging is revised, which is very specifically honed into now where we're going as a project. So it really is, it's a very elegant kind of like full package solution that is the result of so much work.
Right, and we will talk about the different aspects of the project, but I think one of the main appeal of ZENcash is the privacy feature, right? And the fact that you're still using ZK snarks, and that's what people, that's what really draws people first to the coin, and that is still probably the key element, and what's really driving what is the USP of the coin as a coin. So apart from that, let's talk about the other aspects of Horizen, and what can we expect? What is under the umbrella?
Yes, for sure. So there's a few key things. So in the very near term, there's going to be, like, on the investment side, which goes to the economics, which is also very important. We're going to have Grayscale Investments, which is a New York-based financial institution, is launching a Zen investment trust. So this is a very important thing for the project because it opens the door to institutional investment, into large accredited investors who want to get into the project in a regulated way. So this is really important, and it signals, in my opinion, it signals high quality, because this is a firm that does extremely detailed due diligence on projects, and they only provide this type of service for a very small number of projects, actually. We're going to be their 8th investment trust. So
where are they based?
New York City. So
and America is quite tough on regulation, so if they're based in America, that's already quite a big deal.
And they're based in New York City, which is the most regulated environment in the US. So they comply with BIT license requirements as well. So we passed that regulatory hurdle, which is huge. So it shows that our team is legitimate. The project is very promising. We're innovating. We have a very professional team, and then they like that. So they're actually a digital currency group, a DCG company, Grayscale. So we have this institutional partnership with DCG, and now Grayscale is going to launch this investment vehicle for us. So in the short term, that's a really important new development for the project, and that's something we're very excited about. Fast forward about a month from now, you're going to see a couple new products released to the market, which will be really nice. Actually, not just new products, but on the core engineering side, we had this 51% attack a couple months ago.
I remember that, yes.
It sucks for a project like this. Is like the one thing a blockchain project does not want to happen to it, is a 51% attack.
You had to do a change in the code, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So we actually, what resulted from that, besides the short-term fixes, that we spun up the team and we mitigated the immediate crisis very professionally. But the intermediate-term solution was actually we did an engineering innovation, which was a modification to the longest chain rule or the Nakamoto consensus, which is what was derived from Bitcoin. And almost every Bitcoin-derived cryptocurrency project uses the longest chain rule. But there's a vulnerability there, which is basically a malicious miner could mine a sequence of blocks in private and then inject them all into the chain at once. Now, we had a very novel innovation here was we penalized delayed reporting of a block. So if you mine a block, you solve a block, and you keep it private. You don't tell the network. And then you tell the network later on, like a whole sequence of these private blocks, we penalize you for that. And we don't allow that to be accepted as
You don't accept it.
Right, exactly. Well, what we do is it ends up being in essence kind of like an unaccepted branch of the chain that could be accepted in the future if other miners all of a sudden start chipping away at the penalty. But there's a penalty because we don't want to induce network segregation. Like we don't want the chain to split, the network to split. So we need to have a mechanism to reconverge it. So it's a penalty that can be worked down over time, but it's at a disadvantage to honest miners. And that's the key point, is honest miners will always have an advantage. So this is a very exciting innovation that right now we actually have on our public testnet, but right now it's the Zen Foundation nodes that are running this upgraded software. So it's on the public testnet, but it's our nodes running it. We're going to release the code publicly next week so that the broad public can now test it with us. So this is a very interesting, I think, major innovation for the industry, because if we can kill the threat of a 51% attack, all of these other projects that run Bitcoin-derived code can now be safe. So that's really big.
So we can expect that to be copied very soon by other projects.
And I hope so. I really hope so, because we want a healthy industry, and it hurts the entire industry, including us, if other projects get hacked, or not hacked.
And they have been. There are a few other coins that recently had similar issues. It wasn't exactly the same nature, but they did have a couple of coins had 51% attacks. Now, while we're still talking about the miners, I want to touch on another thing we were talking last time in May with Rob. Our conversation was that in the same day when there was a new ASIC chip that was really threatening the GPU miners, and a lot of people weren't very, they were afraid, and they weren't very happy that at the time there wasn't any plans for changing of the code to protect GPU miners. I think it was a month later, or just a few weeks after that conversation, I saw that you guys actually decided to make a change and to be more GPU mining friendly. So tell me, how did that go? I know that the community there was a lot of uproar from the community, and you listened.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Well, I could say we're listening. So we actually haven't implemented a change on the engineering side yet. What we've done, like that article that you mentioned, is about a month ago, Rolf signaled to the market by writing a post saying, here's what we're considering. And our philosophy is we want to be as decentralized as possible, including on mining, obviously, right? So we're philosophically aligned with the GPU miners, where we want to protect the decentralized nature of the chain. Now, caveat that with the reality is ASICs aren't bad because they're ASICs. Like there's nothing inherently bad about an ASIC, right? What is bad for an ecosystem is if there's one monopolist like Bitmain that owns all of the ASICs, and then they get a disproportionate share of the new coins issued, right? That's the problem. So already that problem's solved. So now there's other Equihash ASIC producers out there, manufacturers. So the monopoly problem's gone. Now it's an oligopoly, which still isn't optimal, but it's better than a monopoly, right? The good thing though is that they're actually selling these machines on the retail market. So now other miners are able to just go out and buy ASICs, which is a good thing. That doesn't help necessarily those who have already invested in GPUs that are now becoming obsolete rapidly. So we still are exploring. Now, the most obvious solution here is a parameter shift on Equihash. So we can up the parameters. There's the 1445 parameter set. It's more memory intensive and should you know, at least kick the can down the road as far as ASICs being able to mine it. But, you know, the thing is, these are all short-term fixes, right? If you do some memory hardening on your mining algorithm, it just means it's going to take another few months for a manufacturer to get out to market. So are we going to be in this reactive crisis mode forever? I think that that's silly. That's a horrible strategy. So really what we're trying to do is, we view this strategically. There's a strategic landscape here. We need to think, number one, if we were to do nothing, we could potentially, and say Zcash, which is the dominant Equihash mining project, were to shift away. Now all of a sudden we get all of the ASICs mining Zen, and we're the algorithm leader for, you know, this particular parameter set for Equihash. That could potentially be a strategic advantage right there, because algorithm leaders in an area, in a category, typically have some advantage because all miners want to rush into there and mine the algorithm leader. If we were to pivot now into this kind of upgrade, that's also potentially a good strategic thing, and it respects our current GPU miners. But of course, they're one stakeholder group out of an entire ecosystem. And what Ralph has been very good at saying is we weren't going to just rush to a parameter change without understanding all of the implications, because we have a big project with a lot of stakeholders and a broad ecosystem. We're not going to just panic and react immediately without understanding the full consequences that ripple to everything that we do, right? So that's why we wanted to take our time. Now, what's taking us longer than we wanted was we got 51% attacked. So the reality is, of everything that we have going on, how are we going to allocate resources optimally in our project? Are we going to ignore the 51% vulnerability to, you know, preserve GPU mining economics? Of course not. You know, that makes no sense. So all, like, the core engineering resources went into the 51% attack mitigation code. And that's what we're wrapping up right now. That's what's on our public test net. We still need to mature this to production level code after all of the testing is done. And then, so right now we've started the evaluation of the ASIC resistance, and we've evaluated the parameter shift. What we're going to do is we're going to rotate engineering resources from 51% attack code once that's fully in production, or at least ready to go into production, and then we're going to rotate them onto this problem. You know, there's a sequence here. I know that people were screaming at us to do things immediately, but, you know, our broader mandate is to, or our mandate's to the broader community, not to one particular stakeholder group.
But you are working on it, so people can still expect that. Yeah.
Of course, exactly. And so what we do is we urge people, like, please, like, just be patient as you can be, and trust us. We recognize this as an issue. Now, the longer term solution here is we're working on a graph technology, a DAG structure, a protocol upgrade to a block DAG. So we're looking at a directed acyclic graph, sort of like IOTA, but I would say it's proof of work optimized. We're not ditching proof of work. We're not ditching mining. Actually, miners should love this protocol upgrade, because we're going to basically package transactions into blocks and arrange the blocks into a tree, so we can do like dozens of blocks per second, which means thousands of transactions per second. But we're still going to retain mining. Now, the cool thing about this is we can collapse the difficulty because we're doing dozens of blocks per second, which means we're hoping to be like solo GPU profitable. So this is the long-term solution. Like, just changing the mining algorithm is like a short-term 3-month fix. It's a lot of work for a 3-month fix, and induces these other risks that we may not fully understand. But if we were to do like a true protocol upgrade that favors solo GPU mining in the future, this is, to me, the where we want to go.
Right. Well, it sounds complicated. And do you think it will be? Do you reckon that will happen over the next year, or do you think it will take longer?
So this is a very big undertaking, and we're tackling it from like a scientific process. So really, science is really important. We can't always just jump to the engineering. So my background, I'm a scientist, not an engineer. So we're actually tackling this. We took an academic protocol for the block DAG structure, and we started evaluating the mathematics of the academic protocol. So this is very different and rigorous from the typical engineering approach that a lot of projects do, where they just build something quickly and rush it to market. We're taking a more measured approach here. We want to make sure that we have an optimal and actually academically valid and sound protocol. So right now, we think we have the mathematics done. So now we're entering the prototype stage. And then once the prototype's delivered, then we're going to be able to start working on a production level, software solution. The reality is, we're hoping to get the prototype by maybe end of Q1 of next year. Or sometime in Q1 of next year for the prototype. From prototype to production could take, another 6 months. So we actually haven't released a target date yet on the production level code, because it's a really big deal. It's a really big, a major, overhaul to our protocol. It's essentially rewriting the code from scratch. So we would no longer be Bitcoin and Zcash based at that point. We would be a completely different protocol.
All right. So yeah, that sounds like a complete change. Well, hopefully that will be welcomed by the community. I know that the community is quite strong behind you. If we look at even just the price of the coin, it hasn't really dropped as much as many other coins in this bear market. You did have a bit of volatility, but most of the time the coin is preserving the price, which is quite remarkable. I mean, many coins didn't manage to sustain their prices, with especially with the latest in the last couple of months. We've had a lot of big dumps. So I'm seeing a very good support from the community, but of course many people were quite unhappy about the GPU miners were quite unhappy.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will manage to sustain that strong faith in the community and the positivity that they have.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, the key metric that I look at is our ranking relative to other projects. And we need to refine this actually. Like academically, you just wouldn't look at a raw ranking, but we went from like 120 rank to 70 rank.
Yes. So at the moment, you're standing on number 70, which is
in a bear market. So yeah, I mean, our price has gone down in the bear market like everyone else, but our ranking has been jumping rapidly, and I think that's the key indicator for me. But if you look at us even more importantly, because the rankings are misleading, because you have so many ICOs hitting the market, and then we're not measuring ourselves against the same set of projects. The set of projects is always expanding, so we're increasing in rank in an expanding set as well. So that's a very positive signal.
Yeah, I mean, just a week ago you were at 79 or something, 70 something. Now you've managed to go up as well. So yes, I'm also feeling quite positive about Zen. Zen is still going to be the ticker. You're not changing that. You're only changing the name of the project to Horizen. And luckily on the exchanges and everything, we are still going to be trading Zen.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, which is good, because it's not going to. It's a cool sticker. It's not going to confuse people. I know that we had a lot of other rebrandings, like Ant shares became Neo, and some people didn't even realize about the rebranding. And one day they just woke up and they looked at their portfolio and they saw a coin called Neo that they never bought. And I even had questions from people saying, "What is this coin? Like, how did I get it?" Because they didn't realize about the rebranding. Earlier on, we had Darkcoin becoming Dash, and Dogecoin Dark becoming Verge, and these were quite big rebrandings. So I think that it's important to keep the Zen as the ticker, because many people are already familiar with it. They're trading it, and it's nice to have a rebranding without detaching yourself completely from what you started with.
Exactly. I completely agree. So we have a lot of sentiment, like sentimentality of people that love the project and they love the Zen. They don't want to lose the Zen. And neither did I. Like, I love the Zen. So that's why I was so happy when we can come up with a platform name that also includes the coin name as just being Zen. I think it's so much better than ZENcash.
Yes. Especially with Bitcoin Cash coming into the game and turning everything upside down and polarizing opinions so much. It's kind of, I wouldn't really want to have anything with cash in there. And especially with cryptocurrencies, a lot of people are trying to make a point about the cryptocurrency really being different from cash money, really being different from even money, because there's so many other aspects to cryptocurrency than just being a medium of exchange. So it's many people are actually calling cryptocurrencies in digital information, that you're exchanging information, and some coins even have a lot of other, in addition to the coin, you can exchange and you can add a lot of other data there. I believe even with Zen. So exactly. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that.
So that's actually a part of, we did a big software upgrade last month, and part of the upgrade was actually, we reintroduced a function within the code, this null transaction function, which allows us to add an arbitrary, or 80 bytes worth of arbitrary data to any transaction. So this is good for us because we actually have a partnership with a PGP service provider called FlowCrypt. So you can actually PGP encrypt your email. Again, that goes towards our privacy, our ecosystem that we're building out. And the partnership is we're going to have the company host their users' public keys on the Horizen blockchain. So that's the way to do this is, we needed to have an ability to add arbitrary data. Now, of course, it's just 80 bytes. So really the big heavy hitting stuff for us as a platform will be once we introduce sidechains. And this is actually, part of the future innovations happening towards the end of the year that we could also talk about, but sidechains are probably one of the most exciting aspects of what we're doing, because here's our real pivot into being a platform and being more than just a cryptocurrency. Is our version of doing this is not to introduce additional functions within our main blockchain, like smart contracting. Our solution is we want to be scalable massively. So we're doing this in sidechain model. So we're going to be introducing smart contracting and a whole bunch of other kind of integration APIs for developers to be able to build on our side chains rather than just our main chain, because we don't want to clog down the main chain as we scale. We want to be mainstream. We want this to be massive network. So when we're doing these specialized things that could be very transaction throughput intensive, we want them to happen on side chains. So that's a very exciting innovation that we'll have. Ideally, towards the end of the year, we're hoping by the end of Q4 to have our first side chain, and the first side chain is going to be our voting treasury system, or DAO. We call it a treasury DAO, which is essentially we're taking our treasury, which is our budget, and we're opening it up to a liquid democracy. So it's not just us making decisions on how to manage the project. I mean, although the community may still hire us to manage the project, I hope we're doing a good job and they want to keep us around, but we're trying to democratize it, though. We think this is very important to be decentralized, truly decentralized, which means we have to democratize the money. The money, it really runs the project. If you think about it, you can't do anything without money, or people volunteer, but it's much slower, less professional process, right? It's people have a day job and then come and contribute some code at nighttime, and don't sleep. That's one thing. Or you hire professional engineers. This is their day job. I think there's two different models. We still want to maintain the open source community contributions, but if we're going to be charging so rapidly forward, we also have to have people that are just dedicated full time to this.
That you can rely on and everything. I'm going to share my screen right now, and we're going to go into on the website just so that we can have a look at. I think here you were in the roadmap, or is it here that I saw something about what's coming?
Oh yeah, so we have a roadmap as well on there, and so on the roadmap you'll be able to see the treasury voting system. Our side chains are the two really big innovations towards the end of the year that set us apart so significantly from cryptocurrency. Yeah, you can click on the roadmap there, and it'll take you to the roadmap. So a big part of our roadmap we've already completed. So we actually issued a new white paper a couple months ago to expand our roadmap. You can see all the things we've done. So we focused really hard on wallets and just getting access and usability, really important for us. Secure nodes, super nodes. So getting our node architecture. Another thing to note is we have the largest node network in the industry right now. So we have about 18,000 nodes that get compensated and paid. So these are high quality machines, or at least higher quality machines than if we weren't enforcing hardware requirements. We're doing a bunch of R&D. You can see that on our roadmap. That's the DAO treasury system that I was just talking about. The scalability study is what I mentioned with the DAG research. Domain fronting is really important to us. Now, we had a bit of a hiccup here because some internet service providers and some technology companies that allowed for domain fronting, which essentially means being able to obfuscate your access to a network. So people who might be behind a firewall induced by their government, We had some challenges here because some tech companies actually, took down some capabilities that we were dependent on. And we're also looking at some distributed file storage capabilities because we have a large node network. So the thought was, well, we can leverage the computational ability of the node network, and we can also leverage the storage capacity of the node network for some specialized documents. So those were some of the ideas that we've been exploring.
Right. And this is now next year what we can expect. Scalability solution, what would that be?
So scalability takes two parts in my mind. Well, really three. So you could bifurcate the scalability discussion into how do you get more transactions per second into your network, and then the second part is how do you deal with the increasing storage requirements of your network, right? If it takes like one terabyte to run a node, that induces its own scalability thing. And of course, the more transactions that are piling up in the blockchain, if you don't prune it in some intelligent way, the storage requirements can keep increasing, which, for a lot of people, we want a node to be running in every household one day. Right?
Do they have to be full nodes?
So no, they don't. They don't. The ones that I'm talking about, the 18,000, are full nodes though. But we also have light clients that are not full nodes. So really, that's the second part of scalability. We're not even tackling that yet because storage capacity is increasing so rapidly on the market. So we can deal with that in the near future. The current problem is how do we get more transactions through the network? So that's what we're doing. Now we can bifurcate this. We have a two-tiered solution to this transaction throughput problem. One is sidechains, right? We want to do a lot of the heavy lifting for smart contracting and DApps and all that on sidechains. The second is the DAG protocol upgrade. So if we could do thousands of transactions per second through a graph technology instead of a blockchain technology, that's also on-chain scaling. So we've got like the sort of off-chain or side-chain scaling, and we've got the on-chain scaling. So a two-part solution here, which I think will be very elegant and innovative for the market. And then, hopefully towards the end of 2019, we can go back and revisit the idea of maybe some sort of intelligent pruning of, we know that not every transaction recorded in history probably has to be kept, or maybe it doesn't have to be kept by every node. So there's a variety of R&D paths that people are taking right now to think about how we can intelligently prune. Like, does every node need to maintain every single transaction record for all of time? Maybe not. Maybe we could even bifurcate or have a multi-tiered node structure like we do right now. Maybe our super nodes will maintain the full transaction history, and maybe full nodes and secure nodes don't have to. Maybe they'll maintain a pruned down version of the transaction history, right? So there's some trade space that we have to be able to work with here that it is very elegant. So really, like, a lot of people question us, well, why are you doing this stuff? Why do you have the nodes? Like, why do you have secure nodes? Why do you have super nodes? Why do you do TLS? Like for us, it's all about, we're thinking long-term. We're thinking 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future, and we're laying the foundation here, the architectural framework, so then we can start doing these really elegant, like multi-tiered solutions that I think will be very nice and innovative for the market.
Now, you mentioned supernodes and secure nodes, and last time with Rolf, we touched on that as well. He explained, but let's do it again for those people who are new to Zen and Horizen and are not really familiar with the differences. How can you briefly explain what is each specific? What's the specific thing about each of these, and how do they differ?
Right, sure. So, I mean, the biggest difference is, well, fundamentally, we want the supernodes to be more heavy lifting computers. So we enforce hardware requirements, and basically, like, technically, right now, the hardware requirements that we enforce are very simple. We just want you to be able to process a shielded transaction, which means run a snark computation. So your computer must be sufficiently strong to be able to run a snark computation. That's how we enforce this stuff, which, some people that's our first order solution. And of course, people can pick at that and say, well, your supernodes really aren't supernodes if all they're doing is processing a snark transaction. We're laying the framework, the groundwork here. So the next thing is, besides we want stronger computers as supernodes than secure nodes, the next thing is we want more skin in the game. So the economics also have to be aligned here. We want more intensive computers, and we want you to have more skin in the game. So we require 500 Zen staking requirement for super nodes and only 42 Zen stake for the secure nodes. Secure nodes are meant to be an entry point. We want as many people to enter our node network as possible. And then on the super nodes, you have to have more skin in the game, because the long-term vision here is the super nodes are going to be doing more of the heavy lifting of the computation, running more software, running more dApps, really like the workhorses of our platform network. So that's why, that's the motivation for it. That's the economics of it. And of course, on the hardware side, we just want to enforce just stronger computers. And of course, our enforcement mechanism right now is very simple. We're actually working on a more sophisticated enforcement mechanism, which is actually tuning the Equihash algorithm and doing like off-chain signatures or off-chain challenges. So that'll be very interesting and a more sophisticated innovation that we'll have towards the end of the year as well. That's part of the R&D that we're doing like in the background.
And do they participate in the voting as well?
So for us, is broad stakeholder involvement as possible is our goal. So we don't want to be, again, nothing wrong with this model, but Dash has masternodes voting. We want everyone that owns even a fraction of a Zen to be able to vote. So if you own, 1/100 millionth of a Zen, you have a right to vote. Now, of course, your 1/100th million of a Zen will not have the same weight as someone who has 10,000 Zen voting, right? So there's this like economic incentive alignment of skin in the game, which is very important. Now, of course, there's like social implications here. Now, some people could say, well, just rich people are just determining where everything goes. Now, of course, first order approximation, there's some truth to that, which is what we want. But one wealthy person with 10,000 Zen, could be overruled by like 10,001, people with 1 Zen, right? So it's not like one person could dominate the entire network, but of course they have more say, which there should be some truth to this. If you're going to put more of your resources into a project,
it makes sense.
Right.
The more heavily invested you are, of course, it means that you are not only supporting the network more, but also you personally have that vested interest, and you need to protect that interest, and you want the best, exactly. Or you should.
Right. So there's some very clear behavioral economics reasons for why you want to do that. Right. So it makes sense. And of course, maybe it's not, maybe we can come up with some like game theoretic, like optimal thing that takes that to the next level. Humanity doesn't have that yet. Maybe we can start experimenting at some stuff, but right now that's our voting system. So basically anyone with a fraction of Zen will be able to vote and have a say in how we do things. And I think this is very important. And there's two really big innovations here from game theory that we're including. One is you don't want the voting mechanism itself to influence the outcome of the elections. This is very important. And in democracies, like in political voting systems and democracies, we see this. Like in the United States, we have a two-party system. Basically, if you're a third party, you have no chance of winning. And this is because there's a stickiness to like the history of the voting system. So if people say, there's no chance for a libertarian to win, so I'm only going to vote for a Republican or a Democrat, right? That's a mechanism design flaw, actually, which we solve by using snarks to do secret balloting. So you cast your ballot secretly during a voting epoch, and at the close of the voting epoch, we add up all of the votes. And we can do this with the homomorphic property of zero knowledge cryptography, where we can prove mathematically that your vote was counted properly, even though we're not revealing your vote to the public. We reveal the result of the election, not the details of the election. So that's problem number one that we solve. Problem number two is voter apathy. We see again in democracies is we have very low voter turnouts in modern democracies. Typically is something like 40%, and sometimes even less of the population will actually go out and vote. We want a much larger percentage of Zen holders to get out there and vote. So we actually pay people to vote, which I think is very cool and innovative. Like
right.
Economically, if you want people to do something, you should pay them to do it, right? You have to align the incentives, and the most basic incentive is to get an economic reward for doing the right thing. So if you're a good citizen of our ecosystem, we're going to reward you for being a good citizen. So these are two very nice, innovative aspects of our voting system that I'm very excited about.
Yeah, that really is really different from what we are used to, isn't it? How is the voting? I mean, do people have to stake the coins in their own wallets, in the official wallets? Because I know many people who are actually holding the coins on exchanges, and
right.
that probably wouldn't give them the right to participate in the voting.
So we just have a prototype right now, which still needs to be refined to go to production. And the question of how we do custody of the coins is still not. We have a few options right now. We haven't settled on the solution that we will be doing. I'll tell you what my preference is. I never want anyone to ever give up their coins. You should always hold your own coins and never have to give up custody of them, right? I hate whenever I have to give up custody of my own coins. This is like, to me, the opposite of why we're doing this whole crypto revolution. Like, we're trying to empower the individual, so you should never have to give up the coin. So I want people to be able to just prove that they have a certain stake in their own wallet that they control. And I would also like this to include node operators. So I don't want people to have to make a choice of, do I stake my Zen to vote, or do I stake my Zen in a node? That should never be a choice. It should be one and the same thing, right? Because our node operators are also a major stakeholder group in our network. It makes no sense to disenfranchise this major stakeholder group from voting. That makes no sense at all. So my vision is, I want to see you retain your own coins in your own wallet, and that could also be your stake wallet for your running your nodes.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense to me as well. I'm not sure how exactly, you're still figuring out how can you make that happen, and are you going to put it to the test soon?
Yeah. So I mean, this is a really key part of what we're doing. I think it just makes the most sense. It's the most elegant economic solution. I think engineering-wise, it's not that difficult because we already track stake addresses, right, for our nodes. So with our node system, we don't require our node operators to give up their Zen, which is very important. All we do is we verify that the address that you registered with us has the Zen. That's very easy to do. We do that all day long already for our current system. So there's no reason, like, that's not an engineering challenge per se, but how we integrate that into the voting system, it gets a little bit more complex. But I think the ingredients are here. We just need to synthesize them into a coherent product.
Right. Well, there's really a lot happening. Is there anything that we are to expect over the next few months that we didn't touch on?
So there's a lot of really cool, like, smaller projects that we're working on. One thing that we always like to talk about is we have a full stack business. Basically, we have all of the functional divisions that you would expect in a large organization. Like, we have marketing, operations, business development. We have a product and user experience division. So all of these divisions have their own, like, sets of projects that they're working on. And every 2 weeks in our biweekly live streams, we go through like a spreadsheet or a table that shows what our projects are, what the estimates to complete are, descriptions and everything, so that people can track what we're doing. But there's some really cool stuff. There's some smaller projects that we haven't really been broadcasting, but are very important. Like, we have a nice user interface for now the community, to submit projects for us to consider funding. So right now they can submit the projects in our forum, but we wanted a much more elegant solution. Like, so now we have a graphical user interface, a GUI, that will be hitting market. Hopefully we'll be done with this project, I think, next month, so that the community will be able to directly submit proposals in a nice way that we can track the community. Other community members can comment on.
Yeah, you can get feedback from.
Yeah, and then importantly, and this is really important, and we realized this from other projects like Dash that funded all these other projects. And then, so there's one thing, you can fund a project, you can evaluate a project, you can fund it, you give them money, and then how do you track that they're actually using the money wisely? Like, maybe you're giving the money to people that are incompetent. Maybe you're giving the money to people that are crooks and they steal it, right? So you have to have a tracking and, like, payment, like, funding dispersal mechanism that keeps people honest. And for us, we have professional project managers on staff. Like, we have people that have run, multi-million-dollar, like, very sophisticated engineering projects from, like, U.S. Space Command, right? And that's my background. One of our senior people is also a technical project manager. So we're used to running very large projects, engineering projects. And the key is you have to be able to do this efficiently. Like, project management is a science in itself. Like, a lot of people underestimate project management. They think it's like scheduling stuff or just communicating. Like, it is so much more. It's actually management.
And you're going to be quite hands-on with the management of the projects that you're funding, basically.
Exactly.
Which is also an extra help for these projects. that they're receiving. Apart from funding, they're also receiving an extra hand from people who are experienced, which is experience is one of the most important things. And many people are going into projects without necessarily the experience, but the great idea and the potential for that idea.
Exactly. There's a huge difference between a great idea and being able to execute on it. So I think what we do really well is execution. We have a very professional team that knows how to just do things professionally. That's key, I think. And if you combine great ideas with ability to execute, it's a powerful combination.
Right. Well, it sounds really exciting, and I'm also quite curious to see which will be the projects that you will back up, because I do see that you've got a very strong team, and you've done some amazing things. I mean, Zen has been around for just over a year. And already it's doing things, it's changing things and innovations. You just mentioned quite a few. So I wish you all the best. Is there anything else that we missed? Anything that is maybe an exclusive or something?
I mean, we could keep talking all day, OJ, but I think we've covered like the really important stuff that's upcoming in the near future. So this was a great opportunity. Thank you so much for letting me come on and having a great interview and kind of leading this in a great direction.
Absolutely, and for me it's a pleasure to have people like you joining me here and talking about some real important stuff and interesting stuff, rather than just talking about Bitcoin all the time, because there's a lot of things happening in the crypto space that is not just Bitcoin. So yeah, thank you for that as well. Thank you for joining me and for your time, and I will add all of the links that are needed for you guys. So just check on the description. There will be the links to the website and the forum and all of the other social media channels. So this is where we're going to leave it. Thanks a lot for that, and hopefully we're going to do another follow-up to talk about what's happening with all of these projects and where are they in a few months' time.
I can't wait.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you and all the best.
Thank you, OJ. Likewise.
Bye, guys.